The film essentially illustrates the concept of a collective consciousness, a collective dream, and this is another bridge to the world today. See, Morpheus is named after the Greek god of dreams, whose name literally means one who forms, giving us this idea of Morpheus as a bit of a guider of dreams, almost akin to the Greek psychopomp, helping Neo navigate the various planes of reality that he walks in. Further, the Greek Morpheus used these two gates, the gates of horn and ivory, to distinguish dreams that were real and those that were illusions. This is another layer that is implied by those two pills earlier on. We also see Morpheus's ship, the Nebuchadnezzar, which is a biblical reference of a king who was haunted by his dreams. And as evidenced by the story, the real world does seem to be a bit like a nightmare. Astromythologically, we can gain even more insight here by learning about Neptune, which tells us that we are dreaming our reality into being, but that we must be mindful that some things are seductive illusions, and there is always a greater truth and reality to be discovered. But in that, we are invited to draw upon our creative imaginations to dream a world into being that is in harmony with the rest of the natural world. In the Matrix, the people who live inside of it don't know about their octopus spider-bot overlords, and they don't really care because they are concerned with other day-to-day things. So what reality are they collectively dreaming? Well, one where they go to work and live their lives and nothing out of the ordinary ever happened. Cypher illustrates this very well with his betrayal, mirroring the betrayal of Judas in the Bible. See, Cypher turns over Morpheus to Agent Smith, and as he's monologuing, giving Tank some time to get his gun, he explains his thinking, mirroring one particular mindset that is not uncommon in today's world. "You call this free?" he asks, alluding that the reality in the Matrix is so much more diverse, with more possibilities for freedom than the quote-unquote real world. Cypher wants to return to that old way of life, to the world before he was woke. But this is a fool's errand. Once you know the truth about something, there's very little forgetting, except maybe in Cypher's case, where he was going to have his mind erased. Now, speaking more of the villains, we also must talk about Agent Smith. During the scene where he's got Morpheus trying to extract the codes, he says some very interesting things. He begins by reflecting upon the collective unconscious, the same thing we just looked at, the state of humanity, the way they live their lives, and then recounts the history of the Matrix, explaining how people must define their reality through misery and suffering. A perfect world was not meant to work. They tried it, but to no avail. Logically, he's not wrong, because at this stage of human history, we are in a stage of suffering, though as many wisdom teachings would describe, we are simply passing through between two golden ages of light. Now, this is evident even today. There is so much suffering because we haven't yet learned how to live in harmony with each other and the planet. And so the machines actively just encoded the Matrix based around the average level of consciousness of the people whose minds populated the Matrix. What the robots didn't try though, was starting their simulation in the 1990s and then create this evolutionary program to help humanity learn and heal and become harmonious beings. Then again, maybe they wouldn't have done that because this particular AI consciousness doesn't seem to have much of a heart. As we learn in the sequel film, they have wiped the Matrix several times and have become exceedingly efficient at it. But in addition to that, he also says this very interesting thing, that humans are not actually mammals because mammals create equilibrium with the surrounding environments. But humans, we move to an area and multiply and then use all of the resources. And the only way humans can survive is to spread to another area. There is another organism on this planet that follows this pattern, and that is called a virus. A very deep and heavy-hitting line, especially right now given our current situation. We are invited to see that our behavioral patterns and the way that we live our lives is not in harmony with the world. But it could be if we would all just wake up, just like Neo is doing throughout the film. Agent Smith describes that he doesn't like the smell of people. He can't stand it, and he wants to get out. He wants to be free of this prison, this zoo, whatever you want to call it. Now, I know his intentions are probably not very good, but him explaining his feelings like this actually might give us a little bit of compassion for Agent Smith, who really just sounds like he wants to live a higher life for himself, exist in a better reality, but he can't because he's programmed to have to wrangle all of the humans together, and as long as Zion exists, a biblical reference to Israel, he cannot ascend in his own right. At any rate, throughout the entire Morpheus rescue, and then fighting Smith afterwards, Neo continually believes in himself more and more until he comes to be the embodiment of a fully ascended being. After his death and he returns to life, He takes out Agent Smith, and we see him take a moment to do some full body breathing. And he breathes life through the walls around him as well, showing his interconnection with the energy and the computer code that makes up reality. Now I wonder, when he died, if his consciousness entered the space between his physical body and his Matrix body, or some other dimension, so that when he returned back to life, he brought with him some deep wisdom about the workings of the universe, and that's why he could see the code. Truly, this is no different than what so many people report after having a near-death experience. And we're still just scratching the surface here on this movie. One aspect of the film that we didn't discuss was the visit to the Oracle, this all-knowing wise woman who guides the awakening souls through the Matrix. The plaque above her door says, "Know thyself," something that Neo does by the end, and a rather significant line of hers was, "Don't worry about the vase." And then he breaks it. She follows this by saying, "What's really gonna bake your noodle later is, would you still have broken it if I hadn't said anything?" The reason this is significant is because the Oracle leaves him with some wisdom and advice. You're not the one, kiddo. Advice that ultimately leads Neo to believing in himself and his ability to save Morpheus by putting others in front of himself. But if she hadn't told him that, would he really have gone to save Morpheus? Much like a few of the other movies we've covered, The Matrix carries a multitude of layers of spiritual depth, some of which are laid bare for all to see, and others that require a little bit deeper exploration. So please take a moment to let us know in the comments, do you think The Matrix is about our world? Or is it just a sci-fi action film for entertainment purposes only? Thank you so much for watching, and make sure to subscribe if you want to see more. And what's really gonna bake your noodle later is, would you still have subscribed if I hadn't said anything?